Good morning, dear students. Welcome to the English grammar class. Today's topic is Chapter 46, Active and Passive Voice. Look at the board, all of you. Tom painted the fence. Okay, which is the subject here? The subject is Tom. And the verb is, the main verb is painted, right? And the object is fence, right? In this sentence, we have three components: subject, verb, and an object. And this sentence talks about Tom, the subject. Okay, and the verb indicates who does something here. Here the verb painted indicates the subject Tom did an action. Correct? In this sentence, subject is more prominent. What is more prominent, more important, or more active? The subject is active. Correct? In this sentence, the subject is more important. The sentence talks about the subject and the subject is active. It does an action here. The subject does an action in this sentence. And the verb painted talks about the subject who does an action here. Correct? So, the verb form which talks about the subject that does an action is in active voice form. Here the verb painted is in active voice form because the verb painted indicates the action done by the subject. And the sentence mainly emphasizes on the subject Tom. The subject Tom is active here. The subject is more important and active here. Okay, so this sentence is called active voice sentence. And what is the structure of a sentence in active voice? Subject, verb, object. Look at the second sentence. Rama helps Hari. What is the structure of a sentence in active voice? It starts with the subject Rama. Next, the main component should be the action, verb, and the last one should be the object. Students, an active voice sentence is always framed with these three main components: subject, verb, object. Second one, in an active voice sentence, the subject is more important. Hence it is called active voice. In an active voice sentence, the subject is more active or more important. Here in this sentence, the whole sentence talks about the subject Rama. Correct? The emphasis goes to the subject Rama. Fine. So the subject is active because the subject does an action here. Rama does an action here. Rama helps someone. Fine. So the subject is the doer here who does an action. It's clearly mentioned here. Third one, the verb tells the action done by the subject in an active voice sentence. Look at the verb here, helps. That talks about the action done by the subject Rama. What does Rama do? Rama helps Hari. Correct? So these 3 points you have to bear in mind while framing a sentence in active voice. And active voice sentences are direct, they are plain and more clear and easy to understand. And the structure of an active voice sentence is subject, verb, and object. Why does an active voice sentence called so? An active voice sentence is called so because the sentence always focuses on the subject. Okay, the more importance goes to the subject of the sentence. Subject is the doer here, subject does an action here, subject is an active component in an active voice sentence. Now look at these two sentences. Tom painted the fence. Obviously the sentence is in active voice form. It has a definite structure like subject, verb and object. Now let's look at the second sentence. The fence was painted by Tom. Okay, children, I have used the object of the active voice as the subject of the second sentence. Am I right? The second sentence starts with the object of the active voice, the fence. The fence was painted by Tom. Here, Tom. Tom is used as the subject here in active voice, but in this sentence it has been treated as an object. It has been treated as an object. It's not the object. Strictly speaking, children, this is the form of a passive voice sentence. How do we frame a sentence in passive voice? First, to find out the object of the active voice, start the passive voice sentence with the object of the active voice. The passive voice sentence usually starts with the object of the active voice. First point. The subject of the passive voice starts with the object of the active voice. Second thing, we have already learned that a subject is a doer, one who does an action in a sentence, correct? But here look at the sentence. The fence is treated as the subject here. It acts as the subject here. Strictly speaking, the word fence is not at all a subject in passive form, but it acts, A-C-T-S, acts as a subject. Fine? The word fence is treated as a subject here, followed by the past form of the auxiliary verb was and painted main verb by. By is the linking word which joins the subject and the object part of the sentence in a part of a sentence in passive voice. In passive voice. Please bear in mind, how do we write a passive voice sentence? First, we need to find out the object of the auxiliary verb. It should be the subject of the passive voice. Passive voice subject fence and auxiliary verb. This is the past participle form of the word painted. Okay, paint, painted, painted. Verb 3 form, third form of the verb. Past participle form of the verb, then the linking word, connecting word by, then object. Okay, so I will write the structure here. Subject was, as we know, the auxiliary verb, right? Auxiliary verb. Auxiliary verb. Painted. Painted is the V3 form, past participle form. Past participle. Participle form of the verb paint. The V3 form, third form of the verb, and by is the linking word or connecting word that connects the subject and object part of a sentence. Linking word, and the word Tom is treated as an object here. Children, this is the structure of a sentence in passive voice form. Subject, auxiliary verb, past participle of the verb, by plus the object. As I told you, a passive voice sentence normally starts with the object of the active voice. And one more thing, the verb in auxiliary verb talks about the action done by the subject. Do you remember? Tom painted the fence. Here the verb painted tells you the action done by the subject Tom. Right? What did Tom do? Tom painted. And in passive voice, the verb painted tells us what has happened to the subject. Fine. Who receives the action of being painted here? The subject fence. So here in passive voice form, subject is the receiver of the action. Okay, in passive voice, subject is the receiver of the action. The subject fence doesn't have any prominent or active role in passive voice sentence. It just acts as a subject here. It doesn't have any more prominent role over here, and it is quite passive. The subject doesn't do any action in passive voice. Otherwise, the subject fence receives the action of being painted. In active voice, subject is the doer of the action. You must be remembering this. Doer, who does an action here. Whereas in passive voice, subject is the receiver of an action. And in passive voice, the subject is it's an inactive member of the sentence. It doesn't do any action here. Correct? Otherwise, it receives the action. It experiences the action done by the object. Isn't it? So, hence, the sentence is called as passive voice, because the subject of the passive voice sentence is passive, inactive. It doesn't do any action, rather it receives or experiences the action. Here is the mind map of the topic, active and passive voice. In an active voice sentence, the verb shows the action done by the subject. The old man opened the gate. Here the subject is the old man, opened is the verb, and gate is the object. As I told you, an active voice sentence generally follows the structure subject, verb and object, and the verb indicates the action done by the subject in the active voice sentence. Here opened, this word indicates what old man did. The old man opened the gate. The verb tells about the action done by the subject in an active voice sentence, whereas in a passive voice sentence, subject is not actively doing anything. Instead, something is happening to the subject by someone else. Example, the gate was opened by the old man. See, the gate is the subject here, was is the auxiliary verb, opened is the past participle form of the verb open by linking word, and the old man functions as the object here. Fine. Here the subject, the gate, doesn't do any action. Otherwise it receives the action, it experiences the action here. So hence the sentence is called as passive voice, because the subject is the receiver of the action. It is inactive, it's passive. Children, here is the introduction of the topic active and passive voice. All of you do watch the video carefully, study well, take care.